Excellent.
Well, good morning and welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Guy O. Dunkley, Jr. from St. Thomas the Apostle Church is here for the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Sam Bowman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we beseech Thee so to direct and dispose the hearts of all Christian rulers, especially Thy servant Mayor Cornett, and associated council members gathered here this day, that they may be godly and quietly governed, and that they may truly and impartially administer justice to the punishment of wickedness and vice, and to the maintenance of Thy true religion and virtue, to the glory of Thy name and the welfare of Thy people of Oklahoma City, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, this is going to be an interesting morning. We are going to get started today by honoring the Academy of Contemporary Music, which is based in downtown Oklahoma City in Bricktown, ACM at UCO, as it's typically called. I know Scott Booker's here and Jim Cowan. Why don't you all come up? We have a proclamation that we'll ask the clerk to read, and then Mr. Squirrel is going to present some examples of what contemporary music can sound like in Oklahoma City.
Whereas it is the mission of the Academy of Contemporary Music at the University of Central Oklahoma, called ACM at UCO, to prepare students for a career in the contemporary music industry as performers, producers, composers, and music business professionals. And whereas the first class of the Academy began on August 17, 2009, with 161 students. Whereas there are currently 200 students enrolled in the Academy, and it is anticipated that another 200 will begin classes in the fall of 2010. Whereas Scott Booker, CEO of the school, is a graduate of the University of Central Oklahoma and has been the manager of the Flaming Lips, a Grammy-winning Oklahoma City band, for over 20 years. Whereas Chris Hicks, the school's coordinator of academic operations, has spent many years in the music industry, performing with Restless Heart and Reba McEntire. And whereas on May 6th, more than 30 of the Academy students will perform for the first annual ACM at UCO Rocks Bricktown event in celebration of the end of the school's first academic year. And whereas the performances will take place at several Bricktown venues throughout the evening, including the Bricktown Brewery, Bricktown Live, Maker's Straight Up Lounge, the Purple Bar at Nona's, Red Dirt Emporium, Roosters, Tapworks, and Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim May 6, 2010 as ACM at UCO Day in Oklahoma City.
Let's show our appreciation and acknowledgement that it is a sign that this city is moving forward and we can get something like this established, and then to have it double again in seemingly its first year is an amazing testament to these two and others who are working and investing in downtown Oklahoma City. So this is the fruits of a lot of people's work. But Scott, congratulations and thanks for all you're doing for us.
Thank you very much.
You want to say anything?
Well, you know, everybody should come down to Bricktown on Thursday and come see our bands. They're going to be playing all over, and we're so excited and proud to be here in Oklahoma City and part of Bricktown. And we hope to continue growing and make you guys more and more proud of us. So thank you.
Aaron Squirrel is here. One of your students?
Yeah, Aaron's one of our guitar students, as you can tell, and we've taught him everything he knows.
All right, Aaron, have at it.
You know, he was composing a song right there, and you guys will be playing. When are you playing?
Thursday, 7:30 for Tamboree.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much.
All the admission's free, right?
All admission is free, so come on down and see our bands, and it's going to be awesome.
I have no doubt. Let's one more time. Let's show our appreciation and appreciate Aaron. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for
Mayor, I got to tell you that we took the Leadership Oklahoma City class through ACM recently, and to a person, the adults in that class were just wowed down there. To see all the young kids and what's going on at the academy, and the growth of it is just phenomenal. And they're coming from all over the country, so this is not just a local issue; it's all over the world. So, congratulations.
It's extraordinary. Thank you.
Mayor, could I take just a quick second? Jim Cowan, before you leave, there was a little blurb in the paper today that Jim Cowan has taken a new position with David Box and is going to be leaving the head of the Bricktown Association. And I just wanted to take a minute to personally thank you so much for everything you've done over these many years. I think first as chairman of the association, or first as board president of the association, and then 3 years as chairman. And you've really done an outstanding job, and you leave Bricktown in a very good place. So thank you so much for your service.
Yes, Jim, thank you. All right, I wouldn't want to follow that act, but our Public Works Department is going to try. It is Public Works Week. Dennis, bring your crew up here. We have a proclamation. Bring your musical instruments if you brought them. You didn't? You didn't bring anything? All right. Francis, you want to go ahead and get started as we get settled?
Whereas public works, infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to the health, safety, and well-being of the citizens of Oklahoma City, and whereas these facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals throughout Oklahoma City. Whereas these individuals design, build, operate, and maintain our transportation systems, water infrastructure, sewage, and refuse disposal systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities that are essential to the health, safety, and comfort of our community. And whereas it is in the interest of all citizens and civic leaders to understand the role that public infrastructure plays in protecting the environment, improving public health and safety, contributing to economic vitality, and enhancing the quality of life in Oklahoma City. Whereas the year 2010 marks the 50th anniversary of National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through 22nd as National Public Works Week in Oklahoma City, and he calls upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
Let's show our appreciation to the professionals in our Public Works Department. That's for you. And I just want to say over the next few years, more attention is going to be given to our infrastructure than ever before. And these people have the assignment to help execute all those programs. But if you look around the city, and a lot of the improvements, especially in the center part of the city, a lot of the new businesses that are opening up are the result of works that have been executed by the Public Works Department. So you guys are doing outstanding work. The private sector is responding just as we hoped they would, and we know you have a lot more coming down the line. So thank you very much on behalf of the citizens of Oklahoma City. Thank you. Thank you. Each month, the South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club helps us salute one of our employees that we have selected out of the 4,300 who work for the city of Oklahoma City as our Employee of the Month. John Gary is here from the Animal Welfare Division. John, why don't you come up? Bring your supporting cast from Animal Welfare. Come on, everybody come up that's here to support John. We have a resolution that I'll ask the clerk to read, and then we're going to talk about some of the tremendous accomplishments of this particular group. Francis?
Whereas John Gary has been a city employee for 10.5 years and is a unit operations supervisor in the Animal Welfare Division of the Development Services Department. Whereas John Gary manages the animal shelter program, which includes the animal shelter, barn and infirmary, supervises 20 employees who provide direct animal care and customer service, coordinates with the Humane Society transfer coordinators to place shelter pets with rescue groups, and coordinates shelter activities with veterinary services and animal control. Whereas John Gary's efforts to save animals' lives, provide quality customer service, and promote the shelter as a desirable place to adopt pets has significantly improved the shelter's live-release rate over the past year, including sending 1,080 animals back to their owners or to other adoption groups in January. Whereas John saved the city over $4,500 by coordinating an effort to find storage units and retrofit them to meet ADA compliance. He also replaced cabinet locks instead of calling a locksmith for a savings of $200. Whereas John and his staff consistently maintain clean and sanitary facilities, treat the more than 9,400 shelter visitors each month with courtesy and respect. He ensures that 30,000 live animals that come through the shelter each year are treated humanely. Whereas John Gary started working for the animal welfare as a shelter worker at age 21 and promoted to veterinary technician, shelter supervisor, and then to animal shelter program manager. Whereas this council desires to recognize John Gary for his commitment and efforts to improve the workplace and make the animal shelter a clean, safe, bright, and customer-friendly place to temporarily house animals. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend John Gary, May 2010, South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Month.
All right, we need a motion on this item. Second. John, this is the suspenseful part of the council meeting to see how many people will support the motion to make you our Employee of the Month. And it's unanimous. Let's show our appreciation. There you go. That's for you. And well, first of all, John, anything you'd like to say?
Well, it's just a privilege to be able to receive something like this and to be able to work for an organization like the city and be able to come to work every day in a job that I truly love. So I appreciate this.
Well, you're certainly making a difference, and we appreciate you, too. We also have, I guess, some new numbers to announce. You know, we have really had a concentrated effort to try and improve our adoption efforts at the animal shelter. And let's see how we're doing. What can you tell us?
Well, first, I want to thank all of you for recognizing John. This is Be Kind to Animals Week. It couldn't have happened at a better time. We have continually, every month, done better and better in our adoptions, and our all-time record to date had been 777 adoptions in October of last year. With John, with John's leadership in the shelter, last month for April, we did 808 adoptions. So we were very, very thrilled about that, and then we did 97 adoptions on Saturday. So we're very, very excited for the progress we're making toward our live release rate, and we appreciate the support of the council and the manager. Thank you.
That is amazing. Over 800 adoptions in 1 month. So we have a lot of citizens out there to thank for coming and providing homes to dogs, cats, and other assorted animals that might come through the shelter. But certainly thanks to our employees out there. It's one of the jobs that I think I and the council appreciate the most of our city employees, those who work at the animal shelter and trying to make a better city in many, many ways. So thank you all very much. Thanks for what you're doing. You bet. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. Sounds like May's off to a good start if we had 97 on May. Okay, maybe we'll be back next month with another record. Let's show our appreciation to our animal shelter employees. John, congratulations.
Mayor, I can't think of a more challenging place to work in the city of Oklahoma City. We probably all have friends or know people who have volunteered out the shelter. I've got several out there now that love animals, but, you know, love animals when they can go and leave when they choose to. The kind of commitment that folks like John have made, I mean, a career commitment, and continue to keep his head up and a smile on his face, just says so much about that working place and the working environment in Oklahoma City. And with the turnaround in adoptions, as we get to turn around in budget sometime down the road and able to add to the other side of it, that's the spay and neutering, we're going to be down the road where we want to be, and I think we're well on the way. And thanks, John and Catherine and all the good people out there.
I agree. It all starts with people that have a passion, and we're fortunate to have this group in the place we do. Well, our last item this morning is something that came upon us very, very quickly. Saturday night, we had an officer get shot Fortunately, the bulletproof vest that we, the citizens of Oklahoma City, had invested in for all of our officers saved his life, most likely. But we have asked Officer Michael Davis to come down today. Michael, come on up. Let's show our appreciation to Officer Davis. He is still walking gingerly. I know you're off the pain medicine now, and I had him in my office this morning, and he had me feel the area where the bullet hit. I mean, it is still quite a trauma to your body, and your fellow officers were able to pull you out of harm's way. The suspect was taken down by other officers, and one of the reasons I wanted him here is we need to send a message to people who want to aim a gun at one of our police officers. And we certainly appreciate what you were willing to do for us on that night, and glad that the other officers showed up in time. And a reminder to the citizens of Oklahoma City how important it is to support our police and our fire and all of our public safety. And, we can do it with dollars, but at the end of the day, we need people like you, Michael, standing up and showing the other side of the equation, that these are real people standing up and trying to protect Oklahoma City. So thank you for coming down here today, and I'm going to hand you the microphone. And you're welcome to say anything you'd like to say, but I know I speak for the council, and we just say thank you.
I'd just like to say thank you for taking the time to recognize me and my efforts. I am very humbled. I don't think I did anything special. I did my job. I did what I was trained to do, and I've been lucky to receive 15 years of great training on the department. So, I'm sad that a person lost their life, but I did what I did and had to do, and I'm glad I'm still here today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's show our appreciation. Thanks so much. What you doing? As has been our custom in the last few years, we try to honor our state high school champions that come from Oklahoma City. We had a team scheduled to come in today. They had to call and cancel yesterday, so I'm going to ask a deferral on item 3A, which will honor the Class 6A boys champions from Putnam City. So I need a deferral on that item. Okay? And that'll be May 18th, so we're voting on the deferral of item 3A. Passes unanimously. Item 3B we've already voted on, so that puts us to item 4 of the council agenda, which is the Journal of Council Proceedings. Item 4A is to receive the council proceedings for April 27th, and item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 20th. All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Item 5 is a request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, there are several this morning, starting on page 11. On page 11, under item 8E1, item B, 1800 Homa Avenue, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has removed. Item J, 1429 Northwest 97th Street, we ask that be stricken. We need to re-notify. Moving to item 8F1, item 8, 813 North Bronner Avenue, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item C, 2620 South Santa Fe Avenue, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item D, 100 Southwest 27th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item E, 5708 Northwest 32nd Street. We ask that be stricken. We need to re-notify. Item F, 1523 Northwest 34th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item H, 728 Northeast 37th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item K, 817 Northeast 81st Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And then moving to page 14. Page 14, under claims for denial, item 8P1B. We need to strike the claim of Denise and Dixie Jordan. Dixie Jordan, excuse me.
All right. Any other requests for uncontested continuances? Then we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 3 items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the MFA? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right, are there any individual considerations?
Your Honor, BII as an item. I have a question on that one.
Okay, B-I?
No, yeah, it's B, Victor.
Oh, V.
Item.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Sam, and then Larry?
A-D.
A-B?
D.
A-D. Larry?
Q, Your Honor.
Q. All right. Sam, you want to get started with V-I or V1? Pat, I'm sorry.
That was mine, Your Honor. I'll take
Yes, V1.
full blame for it. This item is a resolution authorizing the filing of foreclosure actions on properties with the housing rehabilitation loans. And I was curious as to how many of these we're foreclosing on, what the amount of the foreclosures are, and what percentage of our total portfolio of mortgages does this represent. We had an issue last week on a quitclaim deed, and I think it raised the issue in a lot of people's minds of the fact that the city is a holder of mortgages on a number of properties. I'm curious as to how many of those properties. Perhaps we get a staff report that sort of summarizes their activities in this area.
You're talking about on item 6I?
6I, yes, sir.
Yeah. We'd be happy to get that information to you. We talked about that yesterday afternoon, and we will get that information. Russell?
We are working on a city manager report that explains the entire program. It is rather complex because it involves a series of loans over a number of years that have been amended through time, and we've inherited all of that, and it's going to take some time to convert into simple terms.
Well, you have to be simple terms for council to understand this. I'm doing that. Thank you, Russell. That's fine.
All right. Sam, A.D.
Thank you, Mayor. It has to do with a landscape maintenance agreement between the city and Jefferson Park neighbors. Just wanted to compliment the Jefferson Park group at this time. This has been an incremental effort on Robinson. They started a couple of years ago with a maintenance contract just to get their feet wet on the first couple of blocks north, 23rd and 24th, and after good success and a good working partnership with the Parks Department, have offered to expand that to 3 blocks north. So it's just a nice piece of the median that they're taking under their responsibility, and a time like this with our budget, every little bit helps with the Parks Department. Just want to commend them for that.
All right. Larry, item Q.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. This particular item, I see Dennis here, if he would come forward for just a second, just to see if I'm saying everything right, is an agreement to reimburse Cox Communications to relocate utilities within the scope of the area that has to be cleared for the interchange at I-40 and Morgan Road to be constructed. And this is just another one of those utility relocations that has to be accomplished.
That's correct. There are several there, and this is just one of probably about 7 or 8.
And work is going on those relocations, hopefully to get us to the point of letting the contract in September of this year.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or questions on the consent docket? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on the concurrence docket where there is just one item. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on this item?
Mayor, if I could just mention that this is the approval of the final plans and specifications for Capitol Hill High School. We're really excited to get this project underway. We're going to get to hear a lot about Capitol Hill today, but we're very happy to see this moving along.
And this is a Maps for Kids item. Yes. Ready to vote? All right, vote on the concurrence. Passed unanimously. Go ahead. Do you want to say anything about the concurrence docket?
No.
Okay. Item 8 is items requiring a separate vote, and we will start with the presentation of a proposed budget from the city manager and the budget director.
Thank you. This is the 10th budget that I've presented to the Council of City Manager, and this is by far the most difficult year that we've had as we present that as the budgets are being brought up to the Mayor and Council. And it's been things outside of our control. It's generally due to the national economy that's before us. We'll let these documents get passed out. One thing I do want to ask Council as we get forward is that we do have paper presentations of this PowerPoint this morning. And we decided that because this is so important and because of the gravity of the situation, we want to make sure everybody had hard copies in hands to use for reference. As we go forward and we do departmental presentations, we'd be happy to provide hard copies to Council, but we'd also, in trying to be a little more green, because we are presenting them electronically, be happy to email them to Council, or I know some of you are visual and may prefer the actual having the copies in hand, and we do what any of you would like to do personally on that. So if you'd like to forego the copies, that could be your choice. If you'd like them provided to you, we'd be happy to do that as we go forward. Again, this is a difficult budget this year as we go forward. Today we're going to talk about the national and state economy. We're going to talk about what other cities are doing to respond to it. We're going to talk about Oklahoma City's individual forecast on revenue. We're going to talk about our proposed major expenditure changes, and then we're going to talk about how this affects and give you an overview of the departmental budgets. So with that, we need to talk a little bit about the national situation, or our current situation, excuse me. Sales tax is $19.5 million below the original budget for FY10. So as we get into this 10 months into the year, we're 19.5 below our original budget. And that's it in a nutshell. That's why we're having the issues that are out there. People might say the economy is over. There's all kinds of numbers that show positive things that are going forward. But the fact of the matter is that the sales tax for the 10 months this year to date that we're projecting off of is $19.5 million below the original budget. Sales tax for, and this is really important, sales tax for this fiscal year is expected to finish at about the same amount that we had for fiscal year 2007. Let me say that again. The sales tax for 2010 is going to equal, for what we had in 2007. So it goes back 3 years. Our expenses have gone up over those 3 years, but our revenue has not increased that much. And again, people are saying the recession has ended. Our employment remains somewhat high here to our normals. We're at about 6.1%. That's when things are going well in Oklahoma City, we run about 3.7 to 4%. But the fact of the matter is, it's higher. But Oklahoma City still has the second lowest unemployment of any large metro area in the country. And we've been between the lowest and second lowest, I think now over the last year and a half is where we've been. So although we have some economic downturns in Oklahoma City, we are better suited than probably any other country or any other city in the country. This is, I think, an interesting slide. And the reason it's so interesting is this is the active oil and gas rigs in Oklahoma. And, of course, that's where a lot of our economic vitality comes from, is from the energy business. But if you take a look at that chart tracks pretty well with our sales tax revenues. It's very, very interesting that if you take a look and you put what's going on with the oil and gas industry, and it tracks very well with that one indicator. And you can see it's coming up some, but it's not to the levels that it was, back in 2008. Russell Evans came and presented an economic forecast to the council back in January, and he tells us that we'll look at a gradual recovery in Oklahoma in the second half of 2010. And we are projecting that. We're projecting a 2.25% increase in our sales tax revenues as we go forward. But we're projecting that 2.25% from a lower base. And we wanted to go through with some of what's happening with other cities across the country. And we tried to pick cities and not give you the worst case scenarios, but some cities that we think that are relevant to Oklahoma City, starting with up the Turnpike 100 miles in Tulsa. They've eliminated 279 positions so far, and this was for last year's adjustments. They eliminated 89 police officers. The fire department agreed to compensation concessions, and they've used $2.5 million in fund balance. The City of Baltimore is eliminating 810 positions coming year, 120 in police, 90 in fire, and they've increased taxes and fee increases by $15 million. Many cities have the ability to raise property taxes without a vote of the people. Of course, most cities have property taxes and operating revenue. We do not in Oklahoma. We're reliant solely upon sales tax for that. City of Dallas down the road, and of course they're larger than we are, but still, percentage-wise, they eliminated 793 positions. You think, Dallas, well, they're in the middle of the country. They're not seeing the effects of maybe that you're seeing on the coast. It's not true. Detroit eliminated 300 positions, and they included $12 million in health plan savings. That's on top of the cuts that they made last year. City of Denver is proposing to eliminate or put on hold 600 positions. They've had an early retirement plan. The City of Fort Worth, a very comparable city to Oklahoma City, and again in the same economic belt as we are in, they eliminated 183 positions. They have employee concessions that include eight furlough days, which equals to about 3% in reduction of pay, and they increased the health insurance contributions by 12%. The City of Kansas City, again, a very comparable city to Oklahoma City. They eliminated 135 positions, and they have employee concessions of no pay raises and eliminated 4 of 10 paid holidays. City of Little Rock only eliminated 17 positions, but they had employee concessions. The City of Phoenix, which has been hit hard, they put a 2% additional food tax on, and that allowed them to restore 750 positions, but they had to still eliminate 583 positions, including 141 sworn positions. And on top of that, they had employee concessions of about 3.2% in wage and benefits. And so that's just a snapshot of what's going on out there with other cities as we go forward. Craig's going to come up this morning and talk to us a little bit about our revenues and talk about the budget as we're presenting it to you this morning. Craig?
All right. Thank you, Jim. One thing I would like to point out and recognize is all the hard work that goes into this. It's a long process that we go through in our budget to look at all of our alternatives that are available to us. We do have a lot of our budget staff here this morning. I appreciate all their work. They put in a lot of hard work and long hours, some evenings and some weekends in trying to get this ready. And all the departments have worked very hard in getting this together. So it's been a very challenging time in trying to pull together a good document for you to provide you all the information you need to make decisions as we go forward in the budget. Looking at our revenue in next fiscal year, right now we're projecting our general fund budget at about $333 million. What's interesting with this is it's comparable. We're looking at the FY11 budget. That budget is comparable to the original adopted budget from 2008. So again, it looks like we're rolling back about 3 years. The operating budget is $531.5 million, and then we have a total budget of $876 million. The focus of our discussions with the budget, particularly on the revenue side, is going to be primarily on sales tax. You all have been discussing sales tax issues for some time. We just saw our 14th consecutive month of decline in sales tax. Now, the April sales tax check, as you can see, we've seen some improvement in the decline, the level of decline, and April was almost flat. It was a negative 0.27%, but again, it was the 14th month we've seen of decline in our sales tax. Currently in the fiscal year, we're looking at about a 9.5% decline from last fiscal year, and that's the most significant decline that we have seen in sales tax as far back as what we could find in our records. And so this is very, very important for us. But as you look at April and you see that we're getting to a place where we're about comparable to where we were last year in sales tax revenue for that month, what's important is looking at this slide, you can see that it is comparable. FY9 and 10, when you look on the right side there, is comparable. We're about $1 million. The FY10 April sales tax check is about $1 million below FY08 and about $400,000 below FY07. So while this is an improvement, it doesn't mean that our sales tax revenues have returned to normal or back to the levels that they were at previously. And I know that you all are aware of it, but we want to make sure that we're communicating that, because when we're encouraged with better sales tax checks and checks that aren't declining as far, it still doesn't mean that we've returned to the levels that we were at previously. Another issue when we look at this, we've talked about we've basically rolled back by 3 years in our sales tax and on our revenues. When we look at this chart, this is one that we've looked at. It's amended a little bit, but we looked at it at the workshop. Basically, if you go forward, our projections right now, normal sales tax growth is 4%. That's what our long-term sales tax growth is. If you look going forward, if we get back to normal growth, we're still looking at fiscal year 13 before we get back to the levels of collections from fiscal year 09. And, we could beat that, we could be ahead of that, but that's just looking at our normal trends that we've seen in the past, and so we're back to FY13 before we get back to the levels that we actually saw in FY09. As you can see in this slide, again, we're going to focus now on the general fund. The general fund is our largest operating fund. It provides for most of the services that you see day to day with police and fire and street maintenance, provides for public transportation or support for public transportation. So a lot of those services that you're seeing out there are provided by the general fund. And our largest revenue source is sales tax. Now that's down in percentage from what it used to be, for what it was last year. It's down a little bit, but it is still our largest single revenue source that we have by far. Other taxes over to the right there is at 12%. That includes commercial vehicle tax, the motor fuels tax, alcoholic beverage tax, the tobacco tax, and our largest other tax is use tax, which is similar to the sales tax, but it's for goods purchased outside of the state and brought into the city for use. When you combine all taxes together, we're looking at about 63% of our budget supported by taxes, and that again is why if we look at the economy, we're so closely tied to the economy because we're so reliant upon these taxes, and in particular with sales and use tax. The franchise fees at 11% are mostly from the utilities that use the city's rights of way and for the franchises we have with those public utilities. Other fees has building permit fees incorporated in that. Business licenses are included there, or bond chargebacks. So it's other fees and charges that we have there. Fines make up about 6% of our budget. Nearly $20 million comes from fines. The miscellaneous revenue is then 8%. Looking at these different categories and the growth that's projected for FY10, sales tax, overall we're looking at all revenues at about 2% growth, which is lower than what our normal growth is. Sales tax is projected at 2.78%, and use tax is projected at 12.7%. One of the things we want to point out with this is what we're looking at in normal growth we're expecting within the economy, and looking at the forecast that we receive from OSU, we're expecting more like about 2.25% growth in sales tax and about 5% growth in use tax. However, because of the impact of the construction of the Devon Tower, that bumps up that projection. Now, you've got to remember that the revenues from sales tax and use tax with the Devon Tower are committed to TIF number 8 for the improvements in the downtown area that are included in the Devon redevelopment agreement. But that's what increases those a little bit. Use tax, it increases significantly. Right now, the difference between what's going to come in from the Devon Tower construction on sales tax and use tax is difficult to say right now. We've expected more of that on the use tax side. It may be more on the sales tax side. We're expecting about $3 million in sales and use tax related to the construction of the Devon Tower next fiscal year. If you look at franchise fees, we're projecting at about 2.77%. That's about normal growth that we see there. Our fines are projected to be down slightly. However, it's much improved from what we were expecting when we first started developing the budget because of some improvements we've seen in the fine revenue and the collections in the last few months. So it's down a little bit, but it is improved from what we were expecting originally. License and permits and fees is increasing by 7%, or projected to increase by 7%. This category actually would be down slightly, except that there are some proposed fee increases. We went back and looked at the fee study that was conducted back in 2007, reworked that model. We're going to be coming back with some introduction on some fee increases that actually increases this category as a result of those changes. This is a summary of some of the fee increases that will be coming forward. The parks fee increases for the facility rentals has already been approved, and that was incorporated. The development services fees will be introduced next week prior to the Finance Committee meeting. That includes our building-related permit fees, our current planning fees, and code enforcement fees. So increases will be proposed, and ordinances will be introduced next week on those fees. Also, the public works fee, this is outside of the general fund, but has an impact on the general fund. The stormwater drainage utility fee, there's an increase proposed on that. That'll be introduced actually at the May 18th council meeting. One of the things that we're doing this year to avoid having further reductions in the general fund and the public works department is we're going to be moving some of our drainage maintenance work that was done previously in the general fund. We're going to be transferring that funding source to the stormwater drainage utility. That, along with some other increases they've had with taking on maintenance of the Oklahoma River and other costs in that area, is going to increase the cost there and requires an increase in fee to be able to support that. So this does help in the general fund, but it's also associated with some other increases that they've seen. They actually haven't increased this. I think we haven't increased it since 2007. So it's coming back and looking at that stormwater drainage fee, and again, that'll be introduced on May the 18th. So that sets the stage for our revenues. Now we're going to take a look at our expenditures. There's a couple of options we're going to be talking about, a couple of budget options. This is very unusual for us in looking at the budget, in proposing more than one option, but we had a very significant decline in our revenues. We're under very significant changes that are going on within our budget, and so it required some measures that we normally may not take and some different approaches to looking at the budget. If you look at our expenditures for the general fund, personal services are 74% of the general fund budget. When you incorporate other personnel-related costs that are identified in other categories, like our workers' compensation costs, or the support for internal services like information technology and fleet services and our print shop and the workers' comp, as I mentioned, when you look at those other costs, all personnel-related costs make up more like about 80% of the general fund budget. And that's why when we start talking about reductions in revenues and significant declines in our sales tax revenue, we have to look at our costs and balancing our costs to where our revenues are. And that's why we have a couple of options that we're going to discuss. In public safety, I didn't finish looking at this, I'm sorry. In other services, that's mostly with utilities. It does have our charge packs for internal services and also has the contracting services there. Supplies is a very small portion, and then we do have transfers at 4% of our expenditure budget. Looking at it by service category, at the general fund budget, 65% is related to public safety. Public services is 16%. That includes public works, development services, planning, our support for public transportation. In culture and recreation, that is entirely made up of the Parks and Recreation Department. And then in general government, in that category, it has our general services like our city manager's office, our city auditor's office, municipal counselor's office, finance department, general services, personnel. Those types of internal support services are in general government. Some of the major expenditure assumptions that we made as we started the budget process, and this was working with the city manager and looking at the alternatives that we have in addressing our budget, one of the first things that he wanted to do was try to look at areas that we could reduce costs before we asked departments to go back and take a look at their services. So some of the areas that we did look at is we have capital funding budgeted at $3 million. If you remember, in the mid-year reductions this fiscal year, we reduced capital by $4 million. The capital funding in the general fund is primarily for fleet replacement. It also has facility capital replacement included in that, and some of our infrastructure investment in our technology for networking and for our servers and some of the equipment that we have supporting our technology. We basically eliminated our fleet replacement program this fiscal year. That's something that you can't continue doing long term. If you do continue that, maintenance costs goes up, reliability of the vehicles goes down, and it affects our ability to serve our citizens. So that's an area that we can't continue to eliminate that funding or delay that funding. And so it's important for us to get that back. This year, we're looking at our capital funding at $3 million. It's still below what our normal funding level is. It's down by about $2 million from what we normally fund out of the general fund. We still have it at $3 million, and the majority of that will go towards fleet replacement. The IMSA reserve, we discussed this with the introduction of the ambulance program. The intent last year when we introduced the budget was that we would be able to set that reserve aside because of the ambulance membership program funding more of the ambulance service, and that we'd be able to enhance some services. There was specific discussion about possibly enhancing some public safety services. Because of the situation that we're dealing with this year and the significant decline we've seen in the revenues, it was far greater than what anyone anticipated. What we're having to do is use that reserve to help preserve existing services and existing positions. So it is still being invested back into our services. It's just that rather than enhancing, it's preserving services. Another assumption that we made was reducing our employee health plans and making some adjustments in those to reduce some of our costs. We're still having a significant increase, even with the assumptions that we've made in making some adjustments to the plans. It's still an increase, but it's not increasing as much as what it would because of its assumption. And that is something that still has to be negotiated. As I discussed before, we have two options that we're going to look at. Option number one is it assumes compensation concessions in employee pay for all city employees. I can't talk. For all city employees. It minimizes our reductions in services. It requires no reductions in public safety positions and actually adds public safety positions. This is option number one. In option number two, that does not require concessions on employee compensation, but results in a greater level of service reductions, including public safety. And so that's the basic difference between the two. And we're going to look at an overview of the two and then compare the two options within each department.
Craig, let me stop there for a minute, if you would, please. Option one is one that is a desirable option because of will remain a higher level of service to our citizens. We cannot implement that unilaterally because we need to negotiate with all the unions to achieve option one. Option two is something that we can do unilaterally, but it does provide a reduction in services to our employees. And so by state law, we have to have a balanced budget adopted by mid-June. By June 15th is the last meeting to accomplish that. And option one we cannot, again, do unilaterally. Option two is one that we can do without any movements from our bargaining units.
Looking at option number one on an overview, option number one would include staffing of 4,435 positions. It would add 20 police officers. It would add 10 firefighters. And it would eliminate 21 non-uniform positions and impact services in many different areas. This is, as Jim said, our preferred option. Because of the fact that it enhances public safety, it reduces the impact on other services, and it does lower the employee compensation at a time when we're experiencing reduced and lower revenues. Option one requires negotiations. We can't implement that unilaterally, and that's why what we're calling option one is not included in your budget book, because we could not implement that unilaterally. There is a handout that we have that has a summary of what option one would look like in the budget, but the summary of the main budget document does include option number two. The overview of option number two, we'd have a lower level of staffing. We'd have 4,326 positions. It would be a decrease of 100 positions from the FY10 amended budget, and that would include eliminating 22 police officer positions, 29 firefighter positions, and 49 non-uniform positions. Option two does not require, as Jim said, it does not require the compensation concessions from employees. It requires a higher level of staffing reductions, including public safety, and that is the document. That is the budget that is included in the budget document. What we're going to do now is go through several of the city departments and look at what their budget would look like in option number 1 and what it would look like with option number 2. So we'll make some comparisons there, and I'll try to clarify what the changes are between the two. In the city auditor's office, we would eliminate an audit manager position, which would reduce the audit services or audit program by 11%, and that's going to be the same in option 1 and option 2 for the city auditor's office. And you'll see in several of the departments, option 1 and option 2 do not change. And so we'll try to clarify that as we're going through here. In the city clerk's office, in option number 1, we would not have to eliminate any positions. In option number 2, we would have to eliminate a records control clerk, which would result in some decreases potentially in responses to requests for public information. In the city manager's office, the energy manager in the Office of Sustainability would be eliminated. The program manager in the city manager's office that is currently managing or coordinating the AARA grant program as far as our responses back to the federal government and our reporting to the federal government, that would have to be moved off to another employee in the city manager's office. In public information and marketing, we would eliminate one administrative coordinator, but then we also do include in the city manager's office the staffing for the MAPS 3 projects. The MAPS office would increase staffing by about four positions in order to take on the additional responsibility of managing the MAPS 3 projects while continuing the work at the peak level of construction on the MAPS for Kids program.
And it's important to point out that those positions are not funded with general fund. They're in the city manager's office, but they're not funded with general fund revenues. They're funded with MAPS 3 use tax dollars.
That's right. If we look at option 2, everything that we had included in option 1 in the city manager's office would still occur, but we would also have to eliminate an administrative coordinator from the Action Center. Looking at the development services budget, in option number 1, we do go back and restore, or we eliminate an administrative supervisor position in the animal welfare division. We would be able to restore 2 animal welfare representatives that were eliminated in the mid-year reductions, and there are a couple of departments that we have gone back, if we get to option 1, and restored some services that looks like they're the most significant reductions that have had the most significant impact from the mid-year reductions. And so with animal welfare, this would, in option 1, restore 2 animal welfare representatives that help with the intake of the animals in the adoption program, and we would also add an elevator inspector. We are looking at the fee increases that will come forward next week and be introduced next week, increasing the elevator permit fees, and this would help to enhance the services a little bit in that area. It's an area where we have a lot of backlog right now, and so it would help us in that area.
And we do want to remind the council that at mid-year we eliminated 37 non-uniform positions. So when we're talking about adding a couple back, we've cut some in some areas that do affect our service levels to our citizens, and under the best scenarios we would like to try to modify that, but we're not able to do that very often.
And that's a good point in our budget book, and I'll show you in just a little bit. We'll look at the budget book. We have included the comparison for the changes in staffing. We've incorporated or provided a summary of the changes that were made at mid-year, so you can see, because when we evaluated the budget, one of the things we were looking at is how we affected departments in the mid-year, and then how we're looking at their budget with FY11 also. And so we'll talk about that and show you that in a minute.
So Craig, that mid-year is now?
Yes, what we did in this fiscal year. Yes, sir.
The 37 positions that were eliminated, I think it'd be important if you would clarify positions eliminated and people eliminated. Isn't there a difference there?
There is. Most of the time, because of the fact that we were proactive and had a hiring freeze on that, most of the positions that we eliminated were vacant. So that's a very good point. But I do want to go back and touch base on the numbers. Craig showed a slide earlier that showed 50, if we go with option 2, it's 51 reductions in public safety personnel and 49 in non-public safety personnel. That really needs to add 37 on top of that because of the 37 that were eliminated mid-year. So if we go with option 1, we've got the 37 mid-year plus the 100 that are being proposed in the option 2 scenario.
In option number 2, for development services. We would still have the the position we talked about eliminating the administrative supervisor position in animal welfare. We would not be able to restore the animal welfare representatives. We would still add the elevator inspector, but we would have additional reductions with animal welfare officer, a zoning inspector, and an environmental code inspector would all be eliminated in option number 2. In the finance department, option number 1 and option number 2 are the same. We would have a management and budget analyst eliminated, a customer service representative in treasury would be eliminated, and a data tech in purchasing and payment processing. In the general services department, in option number 1, one data technician would be eliminated in the building management division. If we go to option 2, we would also eliminate a skilled trades worker and a painter from building management. The second shift for the maintenance garage for our fleet maintenance facility at Southwest 15th and Portland would be eliminated. So our hours of operation for the maintenance facility would go now from at 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., would change to 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. We would still be able to maintain most of our equipment. We just wouldn't be able to do as much of our work in the off hours, like preventive maintenance, scheduled work in our off hours. So it'll have an effect of having more downtime on our equipment as a result of this change. We also would have reduced security and custodial services in the downtown campus as well as with the Southwest 15th and Portland campus. In information technology, in option 1, we'd eliminate a total of 7 positions from information technology. It'd be 3 positions in infrastructure support, 2 in customer support, and 2 in application support. If we go to option 2, it's actually 11 positions that would be eliminated, which would increase the number in each of those areas and then also add 1 additional position eliminated in technology enhancements. And basically, it's going to affect their ability to implement new technologies, and it's at a time in the technology world that there are more and more opportunities that are for departments to enhance their services or improve their efficiency using technology. So there's demand for service, more demand for service on information technology, and they're going to actually have to reduce their responses. Their ability to respond to problems will also be affected. It will delay some of the timeliness of their responses, and so that's going to have an effect on our support for information technology services. In the Parks and Recreation Department, we would restore the mowing intervals that were reduced in the mid-year reduction. That's 4 positions, 4 grounds maintenance positions. We would reduce 5 support positions. 3 of these are administrative support, and 2 are in the Civic Center. We would reduce the hours or the programming at Martin Nature Park and reduce the hours at the Foster Indoor Pool. The Carson Pool would be closed, and one of the things we wanted to point out was this would also assume that neighborhood pools that were closed previously would not be reopened. And I know there's some discussion of the possibility of some private entities maybe stepping in and helping to fund some of these pools, but Wendell will discuss that more when he presents his budget in a few weeks. If we go to option 2, on the Parks and Recreation Department, the mowing intervals would not be restored, so we would still have that reduction from the mid-year. And in addition, we would change the hours of operation at the 2 municipal gyms. That would go from 45 hours a week to 25 hours a week, and the hours that they would be open would be more towards the hours that were after school hours. Program would be reduced at the Foster Recreation Center. We already talked about the indoor pool hours being reduced. Also, programming would be reduced there. The fish hatchery would be closed, and the subsidy at the Jimmy Stewart Golf Course would be reduced. Now, it would still leave the operation of the golf course intact, but it would eliminate the restaurant or the snack bar that we have at Jimmy Stewart. In option 1 in the personnel department, a data technician would be eliminated from the benefits line of business. In option 2, a personnel analyst would also be eliminated. In the planning department, an office specialist would be eliminated, and that would was their receptionist, and also a planner 2 in the urban redevelopment line of business. Option 1 and option 2 are the same for planning also. Public transportation and parking, we've been able to reduce our support for public transportation and parking from the general fund by about $1.9 million. Most of that is due to additional grant funding. The MetroLink service, however, is eliminated, and that's a service that provides after-hour services that are after our normal route hours, and the Sunday service, it's a service that is important to some people, but it doesn't have very high ridership on it. So because of the increasing costs and the low ridership in the program, it's proposed for elimination in both option 1 and option 2. In the Public Works Department, I mentioned previously that one of the changes that is being made is the way that we're funding our rural road drainage maintenance program. That will be moving from the general fund into the stormwater drainage utility. It increases the funding or shifts funding of about $1 million out of the general fund and into the stormwater drainage utility fund. It also moves about 11% positions or 12 positions. It changes their funding. A survey aid in option 1 would also be eliminated from the field services division. In option 2, we would still have the changes that we looked at in option 1, but also we'd have to eliminate a construction inspector in field services, a training analyst in streets, and a traffic data collector from traffic management. The utilities department in option 1 and option 2, they're the same. A data systems technician 1 and an equipment operator 1 are eliminated, and a systems analyst 2 is added from the information technology department. One of the reductions that you would see if you look at the budget book in information technology is actually just reallocating a position from information technology into the utilities department, so it'll still be providing the same service. We've saved public safety for last just because it was so complex, and some of the changes that we're looking at, and has a great deal of difference between option 1 and option 2. There are some similarities between option 1 and option 2. One of the things that we have to do this year in public safety is we are proposing to change the funding for 35 firefighter positions and 35 police officer positions, a total of about $5 million, from the general fund to the MAPS 3 use tax fund. This is something that's unusual that we typically don't do. It's a temporary funding source. It's something that's not ongoing. We're going to have this issue addressed long term in another way. But for the interim, because we have that MAPS 3 use tax available, instead of cutting an additional $5 million out of the general fund and eliminating $5 million worth of services, we're able to reallocate that funding so that it's funded through the MAPS 3 use tax fund as opposed to the general fund. And that is, as I said, as we look at the options and the comparison for police and fire between option 1 and option 2, both options assume that $5 million will be reallocated from the general fund to the MAPS 3 use tax fund for public safety costs. In the fire department in option number 1, 10 new firefighter positions would be added in the MAPS and funded through the MAPS 3 use tax fund. We would also restore in the general fund a mechanic position. We eliminated 7 of 31 civilian positions in the fire department in the mid-year reductions. All of them are having an effect. This one has had the most dramatic effect in allowing them to be able to maintain their vehicles in a timely manner. And so this was one that in option 1, again, option 1 requires the concessions and employee compensation, but if we're able to do that, we'd be able to also restore a mechanic position. So there would be no public safety positions eliminated. We actually fire department or fire uniform positions eliminated. We would actually add 10 new firefighter positions and be able to restore the mechanic. If we go to option 2, in total we would end up eliminating 29 firefighter positions. That would eliminate the staffing on 1 engine and 3 brush pumpers. Funding for the 10 new positions that was included in the MAPS 3 use tax that we discussed would have to be used to preserve 10 firefighter positions that otherwise would be eliminated. So as opposed to adding 10 positions, as we talked about in option number 1, the 10 uniform positions, the fire department actually decreased by 29 the number of firefighter positions in option number 2. In the police department, option number 1, 20 new police officer positions would be added and funded through the MAPS 3 use tax. We would eliminate 2 police report clerks out of the records management division and close the Rominger Weed and Seed Center, which would eliminate 1 position. In option number 2, we would still eliminate the 2 records clerks and the position in the Weed and Seed program. We'd also eliminate an office specialist 1 that's associated with some of the officer positions that would be eliminated. And then we'd have to eliminate 22 police officer positions. And it would be many different programs in the police department would be affected. The chief will talk about those. The fire chief and police chief will make their presentations next week, and we'll talk about the specific changes and the impact of those changes. The funding that we had talked about in option 1 for adding 20 new positions in the MAPS 3 use tax would be used to preserve 20 police officer positions that otherwise would be eliminated. So in the options that we're looking at with police and fire, the MAPS 3 use tax will fund 100 police and fire positions next year in both option 1 and option 2. The difference is that in option 1, we're actually adding 30 public safety positions, and in option number 2, we're actually eliminating 51 public safety positions. So that's the primary difference between those two.
But 100 positions are being funded out of MAPS 3 on both options. $7 million from the MAPS 3 use tax will be used in, again, option 1 to retain 70 and add 30. In option 2, it's all used to retain 100.
But the option that adds police and fire still cuts non-uniform positions.
That's correct.
That's correct.
We'd still eliminate 21 non-uniform positions in that option. One of the things that we wanted to do is take a couple of minutes because as revenues have declined, the budget book has not, and so it's a very significant amount of information. There's a lot of information here for you to be able to help you to look at the differences that we're proposing. The first thing I'd like to look at is this small bound document that we called option 1. That is a summary. Again, this is the one that requires the concessions and employee compensation and reduces the services that are impacted and does not require any reductions in public safety and actually adds public safety positions. If you look at page number, well, there's a table of contents in the front, but page number 2 actually has a summary of position changes on option 1. And if you look at that, you can look at each department and see what the position impact is in option number 1. In the formal budget document, that same slide or same table is on page 58. And I'm not going to ask you to make that comparison now, but if you wanted to be able to look at the difference in each department and just look at those side by side for kind of an overview, you could look at page 58 in the budget document and make that comparison here. And we did, as Jim mentioned, incorporate the mid-year reductions in this table also. Behind that, then, we just have a summary of all of the changes that would occur in each department in option number 1, and the back of it is what the adopted budget would look like for each individual fund. So it's our fund tables at the back of that. So that's for the budget document number 1. In the proposed budget book, and this is option number 2 in the proposed budget book, because this is the one that we can implement this unilaterally. It does not have to impact employee compensation. I want to just go through a few things here. Under the introduction tab in the front, there's a transmittal letter from the city manager that begins on page 5. That provides an overview of the budget, a very high-level overview of the budget. Followed behind that is a section called Your City Budget that's an executive summary of the budget. And so if you want to look at that and get a grasp overall at a high level, those two sections help in summarizing what is included in the budget. The next tab is financial summaries. That looks at our revenue and expenditure budget, provides some information on some of the assumptions in revenues and expenditures, and then has our revenue and expenditure summary. The next section is the largest section. That's the department budgets. And if you just look at the first department in there, there is a reader's guide at the front that talks about some of the information there. But look at the airports department that begins on page 67. On the front of it, we'll have in the first couple of pages, we'll have the issues that the department has identified that they're facing over the next several years that are out of their business plan, and also the strategies that they're going to implement to be able to address those issues, and then the results that they're going to use, how they're going to measure success in addressing those issues. We then go into a financial summary for the department of what their budget will look like and how it compares to the FY10 amended budget and the FY09 actual expenditures. Then each section has each department has a performance section. We do have also a position summary and a summary of major changes that follows that financial summary. And then we go through each line of business for the department and look at all of their goals and their objectives and their performance measures in each one of those. And so that's included for each department. In the back, then, you have the fund summary in the next tab. And that's just each individual fund summary that we also had included in that option 1. That's what those fund summaries would look like for option 2. The final section that we have is the capital, and that goes through all the projects that are planned to be either in design or under construction or purchased in the next fiscal year. And it incorporates more than just the city's operating fund. It also has information for the capital budget with the public trusts. I know this is a lot of information that we've given you, and as you're going through this over the next several weeks, if there's any questions that you have, any additional information that you need, feel free to ask us or call us. We'll come over and meet with you individually, whatever you need to help you get the information that you need in making the decisions that we have in this budget.
This is the first step of a 6-week process. The calendar is before you. Obviously, it's more than that. It's about a 6-month process to go through the budget process. But the public portion of the budget process. Introduced today on May 4th. On May 11th, we will have presentations by both the police department and fire department. On May 12th, presentations from Development Services, Public Works, Parks and Rec. On June 8th, Public Transportation, Parking, Information Technology, and Planning. And the goal of adopting the budget on June 15th. So it's about 6 weeks from today. And if there's other areas you would like presented, feel free to let us know, and we'll get it fit in somewhere along the line. So if there's other departments or other information you'd like, just let us know, and we'll be able to get that for you.
It's a lot of material, Pat.
Just a quick question. I want to make sure I understand. Option 1 will require some kind of compensation concession from all the city employees.
That's correct.
Okay, we're not just looking at our union here. We're looking at all the city employees.
That's right. It would apply to all city employees.
Thank you.
Yeah, Brian?
Following up with what Larry had mentioned earlier with the difference between eliminating a position and eliminating a person. In option 1, how much of the elimination are people and how much are positions?
In option 1, there are, I would guess, less than 5 that will be people and not positions.
People and not positions.
Right. Most of the positions are vacant, again, because of the hiring freeze that we've had on for several months.
Jim, I've heard this for some time, but has that hiring freeze had, that much of an impact on where we are today with regards to the few number of actual people we're going to have to lay off? Or have there been some other factors that really have been weighty as well? That's considerable that we're able to come to 5 positions and looking at these cities in this area, and we're really, in this option, due to, for the most part, what you're saying is freezing vacant positions.
Right. But on option 1, it's 37 positions mid-year and another 21, so that's a total of 48 positions. 48 positions out of a group of 4,300 employees. It's 1% of our workforce at that point in time. We do have turnover that goes on constantly throughout the organization, and so we're able to do that. It isn't the positions that's the biggest, or the people that's the biggest issue. People are an issue, and anybody that loses a job is a very, very serious situation. But the fact of the matter is, we had eliminated 48 positions, and so people that were doing that work is now either being done by someone else or not being done.
How long has this actual freeze been on?
Since March of last year.
Yeah. Was it March?
Yes, sir.
March of
9.
Right.
Any other comments or questions for Craig? All right. Craig, thanks for all your work on this. Looks like we're on to item 8B of the council agenda. These are a couple of zoning issues. First is in Ward 3. Their address is 11448 Southwest 44th Street. It's currently AA agricultural. It would become a planned unit development. It's in Ward 3, Larry.
Yes, I think the applicant is here. Dennis, if you would just give us a quick overview of what's involved here.
Yes. Mayor, members of council, Dennis Box. Kendall Dillon and I are here on behalf of the property owner. This will allow, and the property owner owns the entire quarter section, this will allow for development that will front along Mustang Road and then provide a transition between the single-family development that he will also be responsible for, and so we'll have multifamily and then commercial next to Mustang Road.
The Planning Commission met and they approved it with just one no vote. Are there any people who signed up? And there are some technical evaluations that you all agree with?
We have made all those modifications, sir.
Is there any questions from the council? If not, I move for approval with the exception of technical evaluations.
All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
On item 8B2, it's a zoning case in Ward 8. The address is 8300 Greystone Avenue. It's currently R1 single-family residential. It would become a simplified plan unit development. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. The applicant's represented by Mr. Box. Dennis, if you could give the council a brief summary of what is going on out here. It's not as straightforward as you might think.
This is an application, and Dick Coyle and Phil Fitzgerald are in the back. They played a significant role in addressing all the questions that the neighbors had. This is an existing church. Christ the King Church is going to end up purchasing this church. It'll still be used for church activities, and also it'll be used for nursery and then potentially in the future 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. There were questions regarding traffic and buildings and how long they would stay, and we were able to satisfy the neighbors in regard to those issues.
Thank you, Dennis. Francis, anybody sign up? No, sir. Hearing none, the Planning Commission unanimously approved this. The applicants accepted all the TEs. I move.
Oh, we have someone here who would like to speak? Okay. No one had signed up? Okay. That's all right. You can talk now. When you get here, pull the microphone down in front of you, and then give us your name and address for the record.
Helen Noriega, 2006 Elmhurst. I live across the street. And my concern on this, and I'm a member of the Christ the King Parish, I built my home in 1988, and there was nothing about expanding this huge campus. And I have pictures to show you what we're living with now. If they're going to expand this for the grade schools and get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just going to be horrible. It's already horrible now. So if you'd like to see what we're facing now, which is regular
Why don't you hand those to Councilman Mars, and we'll pass them around. And
we have school every day. School lets out. I have been told by one of the teachers or whoever directs traffic that I need to find a new way into my home or readjust my day, so I'm not coming in between 2:30 and 3:30. I can't find a new way home. If I go down Greystone, I still hit the traffic. I can't come down Dorset. I can't get to my house because I'm right across the street. Like I said, this has gotten bigger and bigger as time has gone by, and I'm just concerned that if you're going to make it bigger, it's just going to get god-awful. It's going to make property values go down. If you needed, as you can see from those pictures, if you needed an ambulance or a fire engine, you couldn't get it when they're parked on the sides of the street. You can't get a car down there hardly. And I thought you weren't supposed to park in front of parking water meters, but they do. They have them in front of the fire hydrants. You'll see in the pictures. So my concern is if they're going to expand the school in a campus, it's just going to be awful. If they want to build a big, big campus, they should do like Cassidy School did or Heritage Hall. Go out where there's get out of the residential area because they're taking us over with their traffic. They block off. They used to even put out cones in the street because they would use Elmhurst as a playground for the kids during recess. There's just not enough room. There's just too many people there, I think.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on it who missed our sign-up sheet?
Hi, I'm Kathy Vaughn. I live at 2008. I'm Helen's neighbor. My concerns are a little bit different than Helen's, but yet the same. My kids went to Christ the King. I'm a member at Christ the King. I loved being across the street, but it's gotten out of control. in that there's absolutely zero courtesy whatsoever. They do park on both sides of the streets. If we could get a sign on one side of the street that says no parking, we could get through. Half the time, if there's a funeral over there, I have to get out beforehand. I work, and I work on a schedule. I have to get out beforehand so I can get out at all. And I have a double driveway. They park in my driveway. So the other Sunday, I decided I would drive around to the parking lot. They do not even fill up the current parking lot that they have. We just need to get them off the streets. I really don't have an issue with the school. I don't have an issue with an expansion. What I do have an issue with is the unchristian-like attitude that they portray on the neighborhood. And we get no support from the city because, unfortunately, where we live is considered an unplatted area. So we're not in a designated neighborhood. So, unfortunately, we're in a catch-22 situation. And it's just currently 5 houses. Which is so we get very little support because of that.
Am I to take this, these are not city streets? Is that what you're...
They are city streets, but unfortunately we can't get the city to maintain them well because we are in an unplatted neighborhood. Back in 1957, these 3 houses were annexed out of Nichols Hills and put in Oklahoma City. And they were designated as unplatted. We've been trying for years to get some work done on the street, and unfortunately with all the construction stuff that's come in there, they've been able to get the Nichols Hill streets redone, but we can't get. I actually have seen dogs, big dogs, taking a bath in our potholes. And, I mean, it is so bad. I mean, even the people that go to the church complain about our street. I mean, it really is bad.
Well, yeah, I would say you're making some assertions that probably need to be addressed, and
we've made all those addresses.
But I'm not sure they deal with the issue we're talking about today.
I agree with you. So my issue is this. I really don't want to approve anything until we get some satisfaction.
Okay, but that's a disconnect from where we are today.
I agree.
I'm going to let Councilman Ryan...
Well, I think it's important that we address the parking issue, but I think that is an issue that exists right now. Yes. And it exists whether we approve this particular process or not, project or not. And so we need to make sure that we address the
which they said
issue.
They had.
Well, we'll make sure that we go not only what they said they do, but what the city can do to make it better for you. I'd like to ask the staff to make some comments on the parking issues out there and the streets and our inability to maintain it. I've not heard that before.
That's the first I'd really heard about this section of Elmhurst not being maintained. If you can see from the map, Christ King School is in Nichols Hills. And so we would need to work with Nichols Hills to try to get no parking signs on that piece of that street. The rest of it, this church currently has a daycare center. I can't remember the total number of kids, but they operate with that traffic currently. And basically, my understanding is Christ King will purchase this church, continue the daycare, and eventually evolve into the older kids for their grade school. But I don't know, Dennis may have an answer on that piece of Elmhurst there.
Was the paving issue have to do with Elmhurst or Guilford and Coventry?
Yes.
Well, let me go to the other one first because I know a little bit more about that. We do have a joint project that we're getting ready to do that I've been in conversation with Councilman Ryan about on Guilford and Coventry. Nichols Hills is going to do part of it, and Oklahoma City is going to do part of it, right there in front of, is that West Nichols Hills Elementary, I believe. On Elmhurst, other than responding to pothole patching, I haven't really heard a lot of complaints other than this today.
He's talking about the Public Works Department. He's not talking necessarily about traffic in general. We're dealing with multiple issues here. I'm not saying your assertions or your complaints aren't valid, but they may or may not be pertinent to what we're talking about. I hear you.
Be fine.
Well, perhaps you could get together and explain to Dennis exactly what your concerns are, because we've had some comments about the streets, but nothing as significant as you've indicated this morning. So.
I have called and I've asked about street repair and things, and here's what I've been told. I'm the first house in Oklahoma City, and then Nichols Hills is right next to me. When I talk to the Oklahoma City zoning people, or not the zoning people, the code enforcement, because I was having some other issues with the Nichols Hill side, they said that the Oklahoma City attorney did not want to have a problem with the Nichols Hills department. So I was kind of on my own on that. Now, that's what I was told. I can get you names and numbers, too, because I've got a noise issue. And when I asked about the sewer system, too, I was told that it's an Oklahoma City problem, not a Nichols Hills problem, but I'm the last house, and it starts at my house. Well, to get on your sewer, I have to go all the way down to Greystone. And that's, like she said, unplatted, and I have to get permission. I can't get permission from anyone. So that's my problem. When you guys start letting people start building more and more and more, you kind of forget about us, but you don't forget about us when the taxes go up.
What taxes?
I mean, the property taxes go up. I know that has nothing to do with you, but the property taxes keep going up, and I'm thinking, why can't I get the street fixed? Why can't we get things taken care of? Why can't I get out? If God forbid, I need a fire truck, why can't I get a fire truck? Because they can't get down the streets. Because
well, if this zoning change is going to create a safety issue, that should have been addressed during the planning process. I mean, we had
that's
fundamentally
what my concern
all of these,
is. If you okay this and they make a school there, so then we're going to start backing up, not just on Greystone, but even more on Elmhurst, all the way up Greystone. That's my concern.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to talk to some of these concerns? I think it's important that we make sure that these concerns are addressed adequately.
I do, too. Number one of the things that the staff required us to do was do a traffic study, and we've done a traffic study, and the staff's had the opportunity to review it. With regard to the existing conditions, as Mr. Tiener indicated, the existing conditions provide for preschool that exists now. What we have now is parking that goes out onto the street. Our proposal will take the parking and put it within a parking lot in the future on the church. So we're going to get the parking, and we're going to have queuing spaces. If and when in the future 6th, 7th, and 8th graders come on to the church property, one of the things that the technical evaluations required was that we have a connection to that parking lot, which you see in Nichols Hills directly adjacent to this property. So in our meetings, we had 2 meetings with 2 different neighborhood groups. Parking was an issue. We agreed that we would use existing parking lots that exist out there so we could try to coordinate with traffic. One of the other things you're going to see when you look at your staff report is that the time that the Oklahoma City system lets out their school children, we agreed that we would have a time difference of approximately 20 minutes. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we don't have all the cars coming at the same time. So those issues were addressed. We did get a traffic engineer. We did provide for a guarantee that we would use existing parking lots off this site, and we think it's a good application.
Just explain, how will it be better for the neighborhood if this request goes through?
We will be able to take parking that now pulls up and is on the street. We will be able to pull it within the confines of our property when our development occurs. And we have a commitment that when anything changes, as in 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we will have a connection to that parking lot that you see back to the east. And we have a parking lot that our architect can talk to you about that will provide for the parking and take it away from Greystone, which is the street that she indicated she had a real problem with.
Is the church acknowledging the impact on the neighborhood that exists currently and trying to improve that situation?
Absolutely.
As part of all of this?
Absolutely. We had a meeting at the church. We've had meetings with the neighborhood group, and that's why we've come up with the solutions that we have in regard to the timing issue and also where we would queue and provide for mothers and fathers that were coming to pick up their children at the other parking lots. That was a large issue when we first started this project, and an issue that I think we came up with a good solution on.
Dennis, just a comment, Mayor, if I could. It doesn't sound like folks are availing themselves of the parking lot even today. If there are vacant spaces in the parking lot, but people are taking advantage of trying to park on the street. Would you be willing to discuss only one side of the street parking to facilitate this a little bit?
Yeah, let me have our architect kind of talk to you about the other parking lots and then the one side of the street versus the other. Phil?
My name is Phil Fitzgerald of Fitzgerald Associates Architects, and we've been working on the SPUD submittal for the Christ the King Church. First, I might thank you for that map up. What we're doing right now is currently all of the parking for the Greystone Church backs out onto Greystone, which is very dangerous and just non-conforming. I can't say it's illegal. What we're proposing to do is we'll put all of the parking spaces in a parking lot and capture about 40 more spaces for this church. The school itself is not growing. The current daycare and preschool at Greystone is now coming under the wings of Christ the King. And so they can't grow the school anymore because the classrooms won't accept any more children. So all we're doing is taking the children from the Greystone Presbyterian Church and going to make them a part of the Christ the King Church. So no more children will be growing to the school. So this is not a larger campus. In fact, if anything, if another church were to happen to buy the property, they would probably put even more people in there. So we're just actually taking over the preschool and continuing the same amount of children that we have currently, and so there is no growth pattern. The other thing we're looking at is we would, do water detention as required by the city. There is some serious concerns about water detention over to the west and east, and we're certainly working with the city, and any water detention that's required, we would be accommodating. One of the issues was if it were a middle school, we would actually connect those parking lots to the south parking lot. I'm not saying that we will or won't do that. It's just we are trying to assist and make everything better as proposed to, or as it is currently. Everything that we've done planning-wise should help traffic. It's a situation where the school's not growing, but we're going to take all of that lot and add more parking to the facility and hopefully take cars off the streets. Now, I can't address the fact that there's no curbs and gutters, on Elmhurst, where it's a problem with that, or potholes or those things, but we really have looked at the traffic study, made some recommendations, and think we have a really good solution to actually take traffic off the streets.
It seems to me among your problems, though, is the parents of the kids are just not being hospitable to the neighborhood. And that seems to be a message issue as much as anything else. I would think that the school could address that through communications with the parents a lot easier than we could do it by having more and more police officers show up on the scene every day. And you want to respond to that?
One of the issues is the fact there's no curbs and gutters probably on that street. And so if you can imagine, there's no delineation to park a car on the side of a street. You kind of just get on the grass or get it. So there's no delineation for those neighbors to where curbs and gutter are, and that's in Oklahoma City section. As far as parking on one side of the street, I'm sure that's perfectly an acceptable solution to work something out so that parking goes on one side of the street if that's the case. But again, we're trying to be good neighbors and not grow a campus. We want to make it easy for them to live their lives too, and so we're certainly amenable.
Do you think the school is too large already?
I don't think so, no. In fact, if anything, again, it's not a growth issue. There were more children going to school, I believe, 10 years ago than are going there now. So the population's down. But we can't have any more children in school. We have a very successful school, and but it can't hold any more people anyway. So that's why we couldn't grow the preschool as it is now.
Okay. Yeah, Brian?
You kind of danced around, Councilwoman Salyer's direct question as to the parking on one side of the street or the other, and then you kind of alluded to it. But so what is the answer to that question?
If that's a requirement of the city, we certainly will address it. Now, of course, the issue is need to work with the city of Nichols Hills also, because there's only 3 houses there that are in Oklahoma City. The rest all go up and down city of Nichols Hills. So certainly we would be amenable to work with a solution on that.
Well, I think the issue of one-side street parking needs to be taken to the Traffic Commission, and they have been, I think, very accommodative in the past of looking at school situations and in making those kinds of adjustments. So I would suspect that would be no problem. I would, would really encourage you all to make an application to the Traffic Commission for that issue. I think that'll help. I got a ticket in front of that church one day from the city of Nichols Hills, so I know where I was. But it was
Gary, do you want to say something?
And one other point I'd like to make is I think Mrs. Noriega's problems are such that she needs to sit down with Dennis Clowers and explain what her drainage issues are, sewage issues are, and the other issues, the things of the street condition, because I think those have some peripheral involvement with this project, but very little. As I understand it, the immediate impact on this area would be almost nil, because all they're going to do right now is just maintain the existing daycare school. And so there's not going to be any additional traffic resulting from this initial effort. Now, long term, if they do convert some of that to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there may be some impacts. I hope the traffic study addressed those, and I hope the solutions that are suggested in the PUD, we've heard this morning, will be implemented to try to minimize the impact of any additional traffic caused by the expansion of schools. And I do think that the Traffic Commission has a legitimate issue to look at right here in terms of the parking situation out there, installation of some no parking signs. It's maybe particular times of the day or on one side of the street. I'm not sure what the best solution is, but it's certainly something that our experts in traffic management can address. And I urge you all to make an application to the Planning Commission, to the Traffic Commission, rather, for that kind of relief.
Mm-hmm. Gary?
I just had a question and a comment, and the question is trying to get clarification. Do you have 6, 7, and 8 in that school now? Okay. I thought I heard some dentists say when we add 6, 7, and 8, but that's already there now.
Let me clarify something, too, because I happen to used to sit on the board over there. And when my children were in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they made a deal to expand on the school by adding a classroom every year. So, yes, the school is bigger because they have every year added another classroom to each grade level. I think they're probably up to the 8th grade by now. My kids are all in college, so I don't know. But what I am saying is, you asked the question, I believe, is it growing? Yeah, it has grown since we've been there. I've been there 16 years. I know Helen's been there longer. And I do know for a fact that it has grown because I was involved in it, and I was fine with it. I just would like some cooperation is what I would like to have, and some stipulations so we can get some safety in there. I mean, thank God my kids are grown. I have grandchildren. I don't even allow them in the front yard.
My second thing is just a comment, and that is this goes on all over, certainly goes on all over my ward, northwest part of town. Every school out there seems like the parents would rather tie up or completely block a lane of traffic on an arterial street than pull into the parking lot. They just don't like pulling into the parking lots for some reason. So the concept of we're going to add parking lots is not going to solve the issue you saw in those pictures that went around. But I agree with Councilman Ryan that that's something the Traffic Commission is going to have to address as a public safety issue in the neighborhoods. And we can only address that on the part that's in Oklahoma City. But I don't want anybody to think that adding all these parking lots is going to get those parents off the street, because it just doesn't do it. I haven't seen anybody do it yet.
I think the mayor's point is really good. Some educational communication within the church school to its members and patrons is important to address some of the issues that the lady who's concerned about parking brought up, because I think a funeral or some special occasion like that requires some special adjustments to the parking situation out there. We need to make those. But that's an issue that properly should come before the Traffic Commission report gets here. And I think we shouldn't usurp their responsibilities and their expertise this morning. Dennis, do you have a feel for when, if at all, that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade would be moved over to that school situation?
I am told that it's 50% chance it might move, 50% chance it might not. Your question was when, and it would be, would you say at least 3 to 5 years in the future? At least 3 to 5 years in the future before they would have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders there.
At that time, would there be any action that would require city approval?
No. No. But that was looked at not only in the traffic study, but some of the TEs and the requirements if 6th, 7th, and 8th graders were at this location. And the disconnect, Councilman Myers, might have been that this was the Presbyterian church, and they didn't have on this small piece of property 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And that the zoning would allow it at this location.
You keep referring to a traffic study. Was that traffic study done at school let-out time? Or was it done for normal traffic during the day or for employees of the school?
No, it was done.
There's a big difference.
Yeah. It was done for different times of the day, but it was done during the times that people would be taking their children to school and picking them up.
Larry, do you say something?
Yeah, Dennis, in that traffic study, was any consideration given or any ideas broached about making that street one-way during the hours of pickup and delivery? Because I've seen that work very effectively at an elementary school in my ward.
I don't think that was a requirement, but we're not opposed to that if the traffic commission wants to look at those options.
Well, I think the issues that we've heard about this morning are peripheral to this project. The initial impact is going to be nothing because there is an existing daycare center there now, and it's going to be operated just like it is now. So I think the project as proposed, and I ask staff this, were you satisfied with the traffic study that the applicant provided addressed the issues that Councilman Morris talked about?
Yes, the only recommendation, excuse me, was that they maybe consider altering the time when the kids are dropped off, and they've done that in their application. So we were comfortable, or traffic management was comfortable.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay. Well, Your Honor, with the caveat that we will have a meeting with the ladies here with our Public Works Director to address the drainage, sewer issues, and the parking issues with the appropriate people, I would move for approval.
Okay. Comments or questions? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. I would just ask that the school do a better job of communicating with the parents about the problems and the impact on the neighborhood. And, there are advantages and disadvantages to living next to an elementary school. And I think we're seeing it all today. We heard about the advantages when you have children going to school there. And there are disadvantages when you don't have kids going to school there and the traffic backs up. But, we have hundreds of elementary schools in the city area, and this happens to a different degree all over. And it gets into the debate, do you want your elementary schools on arterial streets or do you want them inside of neighborhoods? And there's pros and cons to both. And when you put them inside neighborhoods, this is what happens because the traffic flow is just not there to handle the heavy flow that happens around let-out time. And I wish we had a community where parents let their kids walk to school, and it was a neighborhood school, and there wasn't a single car being picked up by parents, and maybe we can move in that direction as well. But it is what it is. Thank you all for coming down today and drawing our attention to these other issues, and hopefully we can address them in another manner. Dennis, thanks for your work on this. All right. Puts us to 8C. This is a public hearing clarifying functions of the CVB.
Jane Abraham is going to give us a brief overview of what the changes to the ordinance are. Councilman Mars is on the CVB and is pretty involved on those issues. And then we have Mike Carrier here today also.
And I misspoke. This is not a public hearing. This is just being introduced today, right, for a future public hearing. Okay. Jane?
Just briefly, I'm Jane Abraham, Community and Government Affairs Manager in the City Manager's Office. And just generally, the changes that are proposed to the city's ordinance as it pertains to the Convention and Visitors Commission and its role with the city and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The current ordinance was put in place many, many years ago when the commission was engaged in actual promotional activities, and over time that role has really changed, and these functions are now performed by professional staff in the Bureau Division of the Chamber as part of a contract with the city. And this contract has been managed in the City Manager's Office with oversight from the Council Economic Development Committee, and the CVB has been reporting on a quarterly basis to that committee for the last several years. Starting in fiscal year 2011, the CVB will report directly to the Council by providing a quarterly report, which will be similar to the report that you currently receive from the Chamber President, Roy Williams, when he comes and speaks to the Council on a quarterly basis. The makeup of the Commission does not change. It's still a 17-member board. However, the ordinance will now allow the Chair of the Commission to appoint ad hoc committees to address different topics. And the ordinance will also outline the role of the Commission in terms of the recommendations it provides, budgeting, et cetera. So I can answer any questions or...
Yeah, Gary, do you have any comments on this?
Well, just quickly, that after the adoption or after the passage of the increase in the hotel motel tax and the change in the ordinance that increased the size of the commission, I noticed that the commission and the ordinance the commission was operating under the old ordinance for so long and adopting into the new ordinance, and there were just a few little items that needed to be tweaked to make sure that the commission operations under the new ordinance met what they thought they were doing. And that's what, when she referred to some of the committee assignments and some of the responsibilities. So I asked for a review of the ordinance to more closely mirror what the commission does and thinks it's doing. And then also it seemed appropriate that with the dollars that are going into that for event sponsorship, that the reports start coming to council, so we start hearing directly from the Bureau on what's going on with that. So that's what it is, and I think it's a good change and certainly support it.
Okay, and it's just for introduction today, so we'll be dealing with it. Yeah, Larry?
Hey, Your Honor, and I'll let the other members of the Economic Development Committee speak for themselves, but as being the chairman of that, we've been aware that there was this idea of moving it to a direct report to the council, and I don't think we have any challenge. I think we're in favor of that also.
Okay. See lots of heads nodding. All right. Let's need a motion on this item. Move it. Cast your votes. We're voting on item 8C. Passed unanimously. Item 8D is another item that's being introduced today, and it has to do with our drainage and flood control. Anything we need to know about this?
Dennis will just give you a quick overview of what it is. It's updating some drainage.
FEMA updated all of their flood maps over the past year or so, and this is just another in a series of adoptions of the maps that affect Oklahoma City. You've already approved the ones in Oklahoma County, Cleveland County, and Canadian County late last year. This is for a half a square mile that extends into Pottawatomie County. So it's pretty much of a housekeeping issue.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8D. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8E is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8E? Looks like we're good to go. How about a motion? Second. Cast your votes on item 8E. Passed unanimously. And item 8F is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8F? Move it. Cast your votes on 8F. Passed unanimously. And we're on to item 8G. This is an amendment to a revocable right-of-way use permit. It has to do with the Paseo Arts situation on Northwest 28th and 30th Street. It's in Ward 2. Sam?
Meg, did you want to speak to this? Mayor, I think this is just a little tweaking of the revocable permit. Laurie's here from the Paseo Art Association if there's any questions, but it's my understanding from the staff notes that inadvertently there was an area that was to be excluded from the original permit that wasn't, and in effect this slightly reduces the permit boundaries. So unless there's somebody signed up, I'd move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8G. Passes unanimously. And we're on to item 8H. This is a permit to hold the Bikes and Bricks Street Party on May 15th in Bricktown. It's in Ward 7. Skip's not here today. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, and that permit is issued. And we're on to item 8I. This is a public hearing regarding the consolidated plan.
And Russell Claus is here this morning to give us a presentation on the consolidated plan.
No lights in action yet. Last week I spoke on the comprehensive plan, and the consolidated plan is essentially the city's plan on the federal grants that we administer, not all of the grants, but the primary grants that we receive from the federal government from HUD. And we have to do this plan in order to receive those funds. It is a 5-year plan. We have just completed the last 5-year plan, and we're beginning the next 5-year plan. So the approval today is for the 2010 to 2015 consolidated plan, as well as the first-year action plan of that plan. As I said, this plan is required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to receive these funds. The funds that we receive are for the Community Development Block Grant, for the Home Investment Partnerships, the Emergency Services Grant, and housing opportunities for people with AIDS. Seem to be having some lights and action problems. These grants are focused on 4 areas that we work with: housing, homelessness, community development, and non-homeless special needs. And I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to give a little summary on what we've completed so far with the last consolidated plan, and then what we're expecting to accomplish in this first year of the 2010-2015 action year plan. And I guess we'll have to use the handouts for this, since we don't have it. You want to check with Josh? It went on page 5 if you're looking at the document. Federal funds have had declined for a while. In fact, they're still about 3.5% down from where we were in 2005, but they have been rising since 2008. In fact, we're up almost 10% since 2008 and about 5% in the current year. Some of the accomplishments in the housing element in the last consolidated plan: we assisted almost 1,600 houses during that time and invested about $18 million into a number of different programs. Most of that was in the Housing Assistance Program, which includes emergency home repair, exterior rehabilitation, and then a home ownership opportunity program. Also a significant investment in the housing development area, which includes the community housing development organizations and the rental rehab program. In the homeless area, we were able to place 209 people, or 209 families, into permanent supportive housing, which is a significant accomplishment, and we're starting to make progress. So there was an article in the paper yesterday about the number of homeless being down, so I think the services that we're providing are starting to have an impact in that respect. About $8 million invested in that area. And then we also provide a range of different services for non-homeless special needs, including transportation coupons. A lot of the elderly and disabled have difficulty moving around. The transit system is not adequate to move them around, and so we provide coupons there to assist them with taxi services. In the community development area, this is our economic development focus. And we were able to create, through assistance to projects like Dell and the Skirvin, over 2,200 jobs in the last 5 years. We also use funds in here for graffiti removal and acquisition of blighted properties. Just over $16 million invested in the last 5 years. And then for the upcoming year, we did receive a bump in community development block grant funds, received an 8% increase there, so an additional $430,000. The changes in the other programs are relatively minor. slight decrease in the home funds.
Russell, may I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is that 8% increase stimulus dollars? Is that one-time money, or is that
We
real money?
We received a separate allocation of just over $1 million, $1.2 million that we had to spend in a very short period of time. So most of that was allocated to ADA improvements, the libraries, and then some of the downtown streets.
But
that was a separate allocation. So this is in the normal entitlement grant funds that we receive.
Wonderful.
In terms of the next year, this consolidated plan is really not a lot different in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. So similar kind of breakdown in terms of the way the funds are distributed. We'd anticipate constructing and rehabilitating about 36 homes in the next year, and then we also provide down payment assistance as well, and we're anticipating being able to assist about 150 families this year and be able to get into a new home. Homeless needs, we're also trying to accomplish about 20 permanent supportive housing units a year, so that's our goal, and then we provide a host of other services, including transportation, health care, substance abuse assistance, etc. And then the non-homeless special needs, we should be able to support about 163 people with housing services, and we'll continue with the taxi care subsidy program as well. In community development, again, the majority of our funds are allocated to the economic development. We do anticipate being able to pay off the balance of the Dell loan that we have in the next fiscal year, which will free up additional funds to be able to support new initiatives in the future. So that's a priority, and those past commitments on those loans have really sort of constrained our ability to be too creative with new programs. This process began in the summer of last year, where we collected all the data about what our process should be. We developed a plan through a number of public hearings that we had in the fall, and then that was reviewed by the Citizens Committee. The Citizens Committee recently approved the plan, as well as the Council Neighbourhood Conservation Committee, and now it's coming before you today for approval. We do have a lot of community input in this process from some of the providers you see here, non-profit providers, neighbourhood organisations. Citizen Committee does weigh in quite a lot, and then we have some special needs advocacy groups, primarily related to those transportation coupons I was talking about. So that's the plan. I'm happy to answer any questions. We do appreciate the assistance of HUD with this. These programs are important for mitigating as much as we can a lot of the issues that we face with some of the underserviced areas of the community, and I think the situation would be far worse without this assistance. We do have concerns going forward as the recession drags on that we may have greater demand in the future, but at this point in time, I think these funds are having a pretty good impact.
Okay, Pat? A quick question, Russell. This is a plan to spend HUD grants, essentially.
To spend the federal funds, yes.
There's no city money involved.
There is no city funds.
Okay.
Yeah.
And assuming that we see a constriction at the federal level to provide these kind of funds, would you anticipate ultimately augmenting it with city funds?
That would be a question for the council. I think the scale of the problem is significantly greater than the federal funds are able to accomplish, and that would be a matter for your deliberation in the future as to whether you wanted to direct funds in that area. It doesn't seem as though that would be a short-term possibility.
So even using the allotment of HUD funds that we see now, we are not addressing all the problems that you see in terms of housing in Oklahoma City for them.
Absolutely not, and I don't know that we ever would either, but we try to prioritize and have the greatest impact we can with the funds, but there are some constraints there too with the way the federal government distributes the funds, so it's we do the best we can under those circumstances. It would be nice to have a little more latitude in some cases.
But the federal government does allow you to recoup some of your administrative costs.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I guess just a quick comment, if I could. I'm really pleased to hear that some of those major long-term commitments will be able to be fulfilled so that we'll have some additional flexibility. I think for many of the years I served on that committee, we really couldn't do anything because we committed in the future to great projects.
Correct.
Skirvin Native American Cultural Center, the John A. Brown Building, wonderful things have occurred through this program, but it's exciting to hear that there may now be some opportunity to do some more innovative things. And my first comment, my second is to compliment your staff, Russell. They do such a great job in this area. And we've been through some ups and downs. We've had reductions in the allocations that we've gotten over the years, and they've done a fabulous job in kind of crafting the best we could do with the resources we have available. And I really would like to recognize Wiley and Steve and your whole group for the work they do for our underserved communities.
Thank you. They put on a stellar effort here, and Steve in particular puts a lot of effort into the consolidated plan every year. It's his baby.
Larry?
Yes, Your Honor. Russell, if you could. Today we are approving the consolidated plan or just introducing it?
You're approving it. We have to submit it next week to Housing and Urban Development.
And so if I had just been hit with some information that I thought needed to be maybe the plan tweaked, it's kind of late for that.
At this point, although we do amend the plan as we need to from time to time, so if you had recommendations on the plan, then we would be happy to talk to you about those.
Okay, so that's probably the best way. Thank you.
Okay, Sam?
Mayor, I've heard from a couple of not-for-profit providers that have been part of this process for a long number of years, and from both of them, complimentary as to the best look ahead in this 5-year plan and their time participating with the city.
Thank you.
All right, looks like we're ready to go. How about a motion? Cast your votes for voting on item 8I. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Russell. Item 8J is a salary continuation for a public safety officer.
Mr. Mayor, it does meet our criteria, and I don't believe we need executive session.
Okay. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8K is an item we do not need executive session on.
Do not.
Okay. How about a motion then on 8K? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8L, I understand we do not need executive session.
That's correct.
Okay. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8M, we do not need executive session.
That's correct.
Okay. Passed unanimously. Item 8N, we do not need executive session.
Do not.
Okay. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Looks like there will be no executive session today. We do not need it on item 8O as well. How about a motion there? Okay, cast your votes, and that item passes unanimously. That puts us to item 8P. These are claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under the sole item left under item 8P? All right, how about a motion on this item? Cast your votes on 8P. Passed unanimously. Item 9 is claims recommended for approval. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Items from council. Pat, anything to get us started today?
No, sir, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Okay. Meg?
Two things, Your Honor, if I could. I said we would be speaking a bit about Capitol Hill today, and I just wanted to recognize Meredith Winowski, I believe is correct, who is a teacher, biochemistry teacher at Capitol Hill High School. She was the Oklahoma City Teacher of the Year. And I'd also like to recognize Greg Eskridge, who was the first runner-up. He's at Wilson Elementary School. And Carrie Helm, who's a drama teacher at Belle Isle Enterprise Middle School.
Great.
Great efforts. And then I did want to remind the citizens that next weekend, May 15th and 16th, is the Rockin' Reunion in Capitol Hill. Group has come together with all sorts of fun activities, music, food. There's a guitar decorating contest. Should be great fun, and I'd encourage everybody to come on down. I know they're still looking for some sponsorship dollars, and if you get in touch with the Capitol Hill Main Street program, they would be happy to talk to you about that.
All right. Brian? All right. Pete?
Just one comment. The mayor and the city clerk and I yesterday evening had the opportunity to open the I Am Pay model exhibit that's housed in the Cox Center. the IM pay model is amazing in that many of the things that were envisioned at that time actually have come to pass. Most of us, I think, and I'm certainly one of them, that have always thought of the pay plan as more of a failure than it was a success, because we focused at that time on the failure of the Galleria to materialize. But if you look at the plan, many of the things in that plan have come to pass. I think even more amazing than that was, though, the number of people that were there last night. It was a very, very good turnout. We were anticipating a few people, and it was a room full. And it was so I think there shows a lot of interest in what has happened and what's going to happen, and because we also exhibited some of the Core to Shore models at the same time in conjunction with it. It was a very interesting evening. Thank you.
Larry?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Jim, if you would pass along to Marcia Slaughter and to her staff my appreciation for whoever worked up for me the estimates of what it would take for a water assessment district out in the Prairie Estates area in southwest Oklahoma City. I was privileged to be able to attend their annual homeowners association this past Saturday afternoon and present that information, and they received it very well and very professionally done. And it was just great to visit with those people and to talk about water needs in the future. Thank you.
Sam?
In front of an audience of no one in the pews, I would just like to make a little commentary on an issue that hopefully will become no more than political posturing. Except for the nagging national recession that we're fighting through, Oklahoma and Oklahoma City in particular is just moving ahead so well and so positively and so much pride. And then to wake up last week to read that a handful of legislators have decided that the immigration law of Arizona is not only not good enough, but we got to one-upmanship Arizona on our concern about immigration. Gratefully, there's been a lot of kickback since that was announced last week. I would just hope if for some reason that effort continues to persist, that this council would send a message that we do not want to take away local law enforcement efforts, fighting crime, policing our neighborhoods, just making Oklahoma City, keeping Oklahoma City as a safe city because of requirement to go out and look for Hispanics or folks that look like Hispanics and ask for papers. Fortunately, 3 leading candidates for governor have all said that's going the wrong direction. And I hope that prevails. But if it doesn't and this continues to persist, I just think from not how we feel on the issue, but just from a rational, objective, practical sense, that we do need to send a message.
Mayor, I just want to comment on that also. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's the wrong road for us to go down, both from a national standpoint in terms of our image, and it makes no sense at a time when we don't have any money to add another meaningless burden to our law enforcement people. And I couldn't agree with that more.
Okay. Gary? Anything else? All right. City manager reports.
Nothing to add outside that there is a proactive code enforcement update in your packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There's not a citizen in the chamber to be heard. So with no executive session, we are adjourned.